begin this afternoon with a man arrested in Volusia County who has died in ICE custody in Miami. I want to bring in Claire Healy. She's the Esserman Investigative Fellow with the Miami Herald, and she joins us live now via Zoom. And Claire, I know you've done some reporting on this. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So we're talking about Johnny Noviello, who is a Canadian national and who died in ICE custody at the Federal Detention Center in downtown Miami. What do we know about what happened?
Well, we don't know very much about his death. We don't have a preliminary cause of death. The medical examiner's office said that it's still under investigation. What we do know is that he was found unresponsive in his cell by staff on Monday, and the staff attempted to resuscitate him and were unsuccessful.
What do we know about Johnny Noviello and what brought him here and what ended up kind of taking him to that detention center in Miami?
Yeah, so I spoke with his father, I spoke with his lawyer, and what we know about him was he was a Canadian citizen. He moved to Daytona Beach when he was about 10 years old in 1986, I believe, 1986, 1988, 88. And so he grew up in Florida. He grew up in Daytona Beach. He came here legally on a legal visa. He got his green card in 1991. And then in 2017, him and his father were both charged with selling opioids out of their family auto shop. And so in 2023, he was convicted of that and he served some time in jail. And he was released for a year on community control, so basically house arrest. And then he was put on probation. He was put on probation in February of this year. And in May, he was picked up at the probation office by ICE. And they initiated removal proceedings against him, which can happen to green card holders who have been convicted of certain crimes. And he was placed in ICE custody in the Federal Detention Center in downtown Miami for about 6 weeks before he passed away this Monday in the center.
I know you said you spoke with his father and with his attorney. What are they saying about his death?
Well, the family said, we are destroyed. You know, this is a great loss for them. His father was devastated, and so was the rest of his family. He is one of about, I think 2 of his brothers are here in Florida, but he's one of 6 siblings. And they just said this is devastating for the family, of course. And they had been trying to reach him for a while. They said they were having difficulty getting in touch with him. And so the father actually has not spoken to him for weeks. And before they were informed by the government of his passing, and this has just devastated the family. His lawyer, who represented him in his criminal case, said he was also shocked. He was really surprised, and he said, you know, obviously this is not a case where he does not have a criminal record, but the lawyer said that he was not posing any public safety risk, and so he was very surprised that ICE took him into federal custody. And he said that, you know, he did not believe that there was a need for this man to be in detention. So those were the conversations I had this week.
As you reported as well, he is the 9th person to die in ICE custody this year and the 4th in a Florida facility. What do we know about those other cases?
Right. So some of the cases, the cause of death is still under investigation. So the government releases extensive reports when someone died, you know, detailing the timeline leading up to their death under federal law. We do know that the other 3 who died this year, one was in Broward Transitional Center. She was a Haitian woman who passed away, and her official cause of death, I believe, is still pending. And the other 2 died after they were detained at Chrome, a detention center here just outside of Miami. And so my colleague and I did an investigation into those cases. One was a Honduran man, and the other was from Ukraine. And so we pulled as much of their medical history as we could. And what we found is, you know, both of them were ruled natural deaths. One died of a stroke, the Ukrainian man. And the other one, the Honduran man, the medical examiner's office said that he died of complications of schizoaffective disorder. And so we dug into that a bit, and the Honduran man, Henry Ruiz Guillen, the experts that we talked to said, you know, that's not a sufficient cause of death. You don't really die of schizophrenia. You die of what happens, you know, different actions, and medication. And so they said that basically this man's death raises a lot of questions. We don't know exactly why he died, and this explanation we were given doesn't quite make sense. And then what we found with the Ukrainian man, Maxim Chernak, who passed away in February, is that medical records show that staff at Chrome thought he may be intoxicated when he was found having a stroke. And so they waited about 40 minutes before calling an ambulance, which experts also raised concern about and said that, every minute really counts when you're having a stroke. So that's what we know about the circumstances for the Florida deaths. The most recent death before Johnny Noviello was in Atlanta. He was a Mexican man, and the official cause of death, I believe, is again still under investigation, but it appears to be an apparent suicide.
You mentioned the extensive reports that are put out on this. What's the next step with the death of Johnny Noviello, and when can we expect kind of that report to come with this?
So the next steps are that there is likely an autopsy being conducted to investigate his death and the circumstances around his death. And ICE must release that report that I mentioned within 90 days. So that should be coming within that 90-day window. We know from his medical history, from his family, that he did have epilepsy and he was on seizure medication. And so I think the question, in a lot of these deaths that are happening in ICE custody is really just, did they receive the medical treatment that they needed? Did they receive the medication that they needed? Did it come in time? And so those are what we'll be looking for in the report that comes out within the next 90 days, and also in the autopsy.
Claire Healy, Esserman Investigative Fellow with the Miami Herald. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live to talk about your reporting and your investigations into these deaths in ICE custody in Miami.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.